reading instruction ends at the end of third grade, so you don't have much opportunity to sort of get them back on track if they aren't on track by third grade. So this past fall, we started an after-school reading academy at 2 of our schools where first and second graders who already have been diagnosed as behind grade level in reading, we have them, and this is at E.K. Poe in Lakewood. We're expanding to 2 more schools next fall. On Tuesdays and Thursdays from 3:30 to 5:30, we have focused reading intervention. And I'm pleased to say that every first grader who was behind in their diagnostic testing when we started are all on grade level now. The second graders, it takes a little more time because they already were, a year further behind. We're starting on campus on Monday the Duke Summer Reading Program for these same 60 kids, so that we can prevent summer reading loss and we can start to build in a love of learning and an appreciation for learning. And matter of fact, I've sent letters to many of my colleagues, all of our elected officials, to come and read to the kids for the first 30 minutes of every weekday of this 6-week program. So again, going back to this whole thing about readiness for training and retraining, we have to address these fundamental deficits as early as they can be diagnosed and put interventions in place to expand these efforts. I also have working on what I call an early warning indicator tracking system, an idea borrowed from Professor Bob Balfance at Johns Hopkins University. And he has a model where he can identify at the end of the 6th grade to almost a 100% degree of certainty every kid that is on track or off track for graduation, and predict every kid that will drop out. And it's based on 4 factors. If they've attended less than 80% of the scheduled class days, if they have a D or an F in mathematics, if they have a D or an F in English, and if they have 1 or more suspensions. So I'm working with our 3 lowest performing middle schools, Tuning, Neal, and Lowe's Grove. And we've actually, over the past 2 years, and we'll do it again this month since the school year ends, by using the Balfance indicators, we have identified every student that's exhibiting 1 or more of these high-yield, high-risk indicators. Any student exhibiting 1 of these 4 has a 75% chance, or the probability is 75% that they won't graduate. Any combination of more than 1 takes it up to a 99% level of certainty. So we can identify the students by name, and we're working with the schools to put interventions in place to get them back on track for graduation so they can graduate. So I say all this to say, and we also have a program with Latino youth. We have 100 Latino kids from 4th through 7th grade, and we're working with them on dropout prevention, pregnancy prevention, and gang prevention. So I say all this to say, my career has totally reversed from where I was focused the first 30 years. But now I realize that to make my colleague and successor's job easier, Duke University is putting more resources in the early education years to include support of East Durham Children's Initiative to make sure that these educational deficits are remediated as early as possible in the educational continuum.
Thank you. Charlie? And if I could just ask our panelists to keep their comments to maybe 4 minutes or so, that'd be great.
I'm done.
Well, to the question of how we're doing, I will say to you candidly, not as well as we can and must do. I'm a strong believer in accountability. I think we have to accommodate the changes in college attendance patterns that I talked about earlier, that's stopping in and out. We're doing well for students who come to us college ready, but we're not doing as well for those students who need to remediate their support. In fact, in North Carolina, within the UNC system, we are prohibited from offering, quote, remedial or developmental courses. So you sort of put it in a bag from a policy perspective. And I would say to you that we're working hard to increase college attendance and success for black males. When we look at college attendance patterns and graduation rates, there's some pockets that just simply don't do as well. And one for us, and then for this nation, is this population called black males, and it's even less so for Latino males. And that's something that we have to come to grips with, we have to acknowledge it, and then to say, what are we going to do about it? So that's what I'd say there. So when I look at how well our students do who major in social work, nursing, biotechnology, public administration, business administration and accounting, hospitality management and tourism, computer information system and computer science, criminal justice, for example, those students tend to do extremely well. They tend to graduate at a high percentage, and they enjoy a good placement record. Well, what do you do about the other 60% of the people who are not majoring in those areas? And it seems to me that that is a question, which brings me to this issue. I think that we have to unbundle this whole notion of education and training without demeaning or denigrating either one. They're both important, and they're part of a continuum. So on this one end, you heard Phil talk about people not possessing literacy skills, okay? And so we can, unless we can really focus on getting people the assistance and the support they need to be able to master, not just to be able to be a functional in the sense of being able to read and write and so on and so forth, that we're going to have to get the literacy level much higher, okay, in order to be able to take advantage of these jobs that are being brought to town or to being created, okay? Otherwise, we're going to continue to have this disconnect between people who participate and those who do not participate, okay? So this unbundling piece is a very important one. And literacy for parents so they can provide support and assistance for their children is a very important piece of that, which brings me to my closing piece, and that is that we're going to have to figure out a way. We're within 5 blocks of one of the largest public housing units in Durham, North Carolina, okay? And that's something that, so on the one end you have North Carolina Central, on the other end you have Durham Tech, and in between we have McDougal, okay? That's the piece, Dallas and everyone, that we really have to figure out a way to get some intensive kind of intervention, okay, that is not as episodical as it is right now. And so I'll just end with that.
So in terms of evaluating our role, what we see as being central to our role, it really can be summarized in terms of the one word, connectivity, connections. The first thing that relates to connections is that we have to provide solid labor market information to the job-seeking community. We have to connect them to the information that enables them to know where opportunities are going to be, what kinds of opportunities they have to earn certain wages and so forth. There have been Phil made an allusion earlier to the tobacco industry in the 1980s. And there were probably a segment of people in Durham who thought those jobs would never go away. You know, I'm going to be able to graduate from high school or not, go into a tobacco factory, make $20+ an hour, and be set, and be able to retire from there. Well, that myth ended in the 80s. And so what we have to constantly do is enable people to know where the opportunities are now, but more important, or as importantly, where they're going to be in the next 5 to 10 years. Don't know how many ice hockey fans there are in here, but I like this analogy. And Wayne Gretzky is considered one of the best ice hockey players of all time. And somebody asked him why he was so good, and he said, "It's because I always skated to where the puck is going to be, not to where it is." So we have to have that mantra in the terms of how we deliver our information and get job seekers to believe the same thing. The second thing is we have to connect them to training opportunities where those opportunities are, and we invest our resources there for the most part. Doesn't mean we forsake other kinds of industries that aren't necessarily growing but are steady, but we really have to make concentrations on things like healthcare, biotechnology, information technology, and now this emerging green jobs, environmental technology, energy efficiency. Those are where opportunities are going to be. And there's a lot of segments in our community. Charlie just made an allusion to McDougal. You could take McDougal, you could take other areas of the community where people just don't know that there are more opportunities available to them than what the traditional markets, construction, retail, those are all good industries, but they're also very cyclical. What happened when the economy, basically when the economy had a significant downturn over these past few years? Residential real estate tanked, right? Housing values went down. Well, what does that mean for construction? You don't need to build any more houses. So if you're a construction worker, what's going to happen to your job opportunities throughout the course of the year? So we have to connect people maybe with some very solid skill sets to new and emerging economies where they can transfer those skills. And then finally, we have to connect job seekers to businesses. I mentioned earlier that there had been a very human service-centered orientation around the provision of workforce development in the past. In other words, someone comes in to any kind of training facility and says, who knows what their mindset was before they came in, but they might say, I have a cousin who's a phlebotomist. They draw blood, and they make a lot of money. I want to do that too. That might be the basis by which they decided on their career opportunity. But if phlebotomy is probably a bad example. But let's say a construction worker. I want to be a construction worker, and but but there's not a lot of businesses hiring in that field. Well, that's what they want to be, so we're going to train them to be that. Well, we've changed that mantra. We have to know where businesses are hiring and invest the training dollars in those opportunities, but also connect job seekers to those opportunities directly. How are we doing? Well, we have 85% of the money we receive is federal. So we have federal standards and metrics that we have to adhere to in order to keep receiving that money. Based on those standards, we're doing pretty well. The vast majority of people that enter our programs, when they exit with a job. They tend to earn more than the average earnings thresholds that we have to meet after they leave our programs. Youth tend to, of the ones that are leaving within a certain time frame, do tend to either find a job or have some kind of post-secondary connection. They either go to Durham Tech, they might get a certification in some industry, and we try to make those industry-based certifications so they're very valuable in terms of them finding jobs. Those standards we're doing pretty well. But just like Charlie said, we have a ways to go, and I think in a few major areas. Number one, we've got to improve the buy-in of the business community in our system. Our vision is for the JobLink Career Center system to be the foremost and preeminent, and that system includes Durham Tech. It includes the Employment Security Commission. It's housed in a building some of you know as the Unemployment Office. But we like to call it the Reemployment Office. It's not just about going there to file benefits if you've gotten laid off, but how do you get reconnected? So we want that JobLink Career Center system to be the primary place for business to find employees, regardless of what kinds of employees they're looking for, what levels of the organization they're looking to fill positions in, or what the background of that employee may have. So that could mean, six-figure earner potentials. That could mean ex-offenders. That could mean nurses. It could mean construction workers. We want the Durham JobLink Career Center system to be the primary place. And we know that year to year, especially in the economic downturn, we've had about 13,000 registered job seekers in a year use that system. So in terms of sheer numbers, businesses should be able to recruit for any and all of their needs from that system. And we have a ways to go in getting there, but we're starting to make some headway. We also need to strengthen the connection between economic and workforce development. In other words, really create a pipeline. I've said a few times, and I don't mind being repetitive, but really knowing where the business opportunities are and getting job seekers to there. When we recruit, and you know, Ted and I and Bill work very closely together on recruiting companies to Durham. How do we connect Durham residents to those opportunities to the best extent possible? For us, it's not just a fairness and equity argument. You know, people say, well, this big company, Quintiles, came into Durham. Why, how come Durham, you know, how come Durham people can't have all of those jobs? Well, that's not realistic given that we're in a very regional marketplace and that there are a lot of communities with very good highway access that have access to companies in Durham. So in fact, based on 2007 figures, anyone have an idea about how many people commuted into Durham County every day? Each day? Take a wild guess. 3,000? 65,000? I sound like an auctioneer. 3,000, 65,000, 40,000.
We have about 15,000 commuting into Duke.
Yeah.
Right,
I'd
okay.
say around
I
80,000.
said 75 to 80.
Wow, okay. So I have old figures, so it probably has increased since then. In 2007, it was 53,000 in the Durham County every day. You know how many commute out?
I would say 12.
It's pretty close. In 07, it was 19. It was 19,000. So Durham County is a hub for a lot of economic activity and growth. But to connect Durham job seekers, like I said, it's not just about fairness and equity, it's really about economic development. Our tax base is based upon, for every $10 of our tax base, anybody have an idea about how much property taxes contribute to that?
60%.
Very good. He cheated.
I just-
He looked at my notes.
Okay, we're going to bring this lesson
Okay.
to a closure.
Yeah, very soon. So another $2 of that is made up of sales taxes. Well, you pay sales taxes when you do what? Spend. You're able to spend when you do what? Work. So if we can connect Durham job seekers to opportunities, we can get them to have income, we can improve our tax base, which improves quality of life for all the Durham citizens. I'll give me a credit on the next segment. I'll be shorter than.
You get a debit. Anyway, this next question will be pretty quick and pretty short. We all understand now that we're competing in a global economy, so I would like to phrase this question. What is your institution doing to prepare your students and workers for competing in a global marketplace? I'm going to start with Charlie on this one, if it's okay with you.
You know, simply put, is to try to help people to understand how small the world really is. And it's made smaller because of technology.
Yep.
And because of multinational corporations and so on and so forth. And so what we say from day one to our students, and especially everything I say to students, the competition really isn't between us and A&T, or between us and Winston-Salem, or between us and anybody, okay? It's with someone in the community that you've never heard of before, that you can't even pronounce the name. And so from day one, what we try to drive home is this whole notion of globalization, okay? And I typically ask people, look at the label in your clothes. Where did your clothes come from? Raise the hood of your car, look at your cell phone, little things like that. So what we're trying to do is to help people to appreciate you all, the impact of globalization. Whether you talk about the environment, whether you talk about jobs, no matter what. And so that's what we're really, really trying to do. And you know what? I must admit to you, I must admit this, is that colleges and universities aren't doing as well as we need to do in helping to put that whole thing in perspective. And until we get a handle on that, y'all, we're going to find ourselves really behind 8 ball. We're number 12 internationally now. The state, the nation that we live in is number 12 in terms of the number of people we're producing with baccalaureate degrees. I know, don't cut me off, I'm finished.
I'm not, I agree with you.
I'm finished.
Is it my turn?
Yes.
Okay.
Remember the debit.
The debit, all right, okay. Globalization, I'm finished. No, the global marketplace, I mean, and I think Charlie hit it on the head. In fact, he said a lot of the comments I was going to say. But I think that as important as that is for undergraduate students to know who they're competing with, kindergartners, first graders, second graders have to know You know, it used to be that maybe elementary schools throughout Durham competed with each other for the best end-of-grade test scores or the best testing marks. Now, really, that comparison is not as relevant as comparing with someone in China or in India. There's a statistic, I don't know it exactly, but it's more undergraduate or more graduates in engineering in U.S. schools, I believe from China or India, than there were Americans last year. This is a global global educational marketplace and employment marketplace, and if we don't understand that and really use the standard of where we need to be in terms of what businesses are looking for, because now, not in globalization, the other thing about globalization is if I'm a business, I can recruit from anywhere. I no longer wait for people to come in and drop in an application. I can recruit from, China or India because of the World Wide Web. So our organization really tries to proliferate that and proliferate competitiveness in that sense.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay.
You've done good.
Yeah, globalization, I think, has many aspects, some of which aren't really, apparent at first blush. What we've tried to do at Durham Tech, we've established a unit of the college called the Center for the Global Learner, and its role is twofold, one of which is to encourage international students to use Durham Tech as a portal to higher education. I think higher education remains one of the things that the United States does exceedingly well. Charlie's point about we're now 12th in the world in producing undergraduates, but higher education remains one thing that attracts global talent to the United States, and we think that the community college can be a portal for global talent to come to eventually to NC Central or UNC or Duke, and so one role of the Center for the Global Learner is to provide that. But the other is to help our programs, our faculty understand some of the hidden aspects of globalization. So we train nurses, we prepare nurses to work at Duke and UNC. Our nursing students need to understand that when they're working on a floor at Duke, they may encounter students from patients from different cultures, different countries that have different expectations about privacy and different expectations about social space, personal space. That's a part of globalization that may not be readily apparent. Our